On today's edition of the Coach's Corner podcast, we talk about Greg Hardy and the whole situation where recently photos were released that showed the damage that he did in his domestic violence suit, our reaction to that, a call to action for Jerry Jones, and an overall analysis of the Dallas Cowboys and what their sponsors should do. We're going to look at the University of Missouri football where 32 players went on strike after a recent string of racial tension has been building up on campus. We're going to talk about the whole crazy situation over there. We're going to talk about college football. We're going to look at LSU's game against Alabama and then them dropping it. We're going to talk about the college football playoffs. I'm going to have Coach Les of the Coach Les Show on Caliwood Radio, formerly ESPN Radio, formerly Fox Sports Radio. He's going to be on here joining us here on the Coach's Corner podcast to talk college football, to talk about the playoff system, the SEC, the ACC, the Pac-12, the Big Ten. We're going to talk about the whole conference thing. Is the SEC still the most dominant conference in college football? We talk about that. We're going to look at the injuries that have been occurring in the NFL each week. It seems like there's been an increasing number of injuries every single week. Big name players are going down. We're going to talk about that. Is it HGH? Is it overtraining? What is it? We're going to talk about all that and much more here on the Coach's Corner podcast. We're going to talk about Carolina Panthers, New England Patriots, and the Cincinnati Bengals, the remaining undefeated teams in the NFL. Which team is the most legit contender? Which one is a contender and which one is a pretender? So we're going to talk about it all much more here tonight on the Coach's Corner podcast. This is the Coach's Corner podcast, hosted live on CodyRoark18.com. We're back. It's a great edition of the Coach's Corner podcast here today, episode 3. A lot of great things. As we went through in the lineup, we're going to talk a lot about the Greg Hardy situation, Missouri, college football, and the NFL. But first and foremost, I want to talk to you guys about something, that's changed my life that I've done. Recently, a lot of times, it's getting that winter year. You want to shave, your beard's kind of growing in. But the problem is this: when it gets too scraggly and you have to shave, you go to reach for the razor blade and it's a dull and it's a rusty razor blade, and it cuts, and it's just so uncomfortable. So I found this thing called the Dollar Shave Club. So Dollar Shave Club, they send you high quality razors to your front door for a few bucks a month, so you can always have a shave with a fresh blade. With the unbelievable rise in the price for razor blades and everything else that comes with it, I decided to make the switch to Dollar Shave Club. For just under $4 a month, I get a high quality shave with a high quality blade, and the best part is they send it right to your very front door every single month. So throw out the dull razor blade that you have now and make a switch to the Dollar Shave Club. I promise you it is worth it. Go to dollarshaveclub.com and change the way you shave. Also, here in the very future episodes, I'm going to have it to where you can go to dollarshaveclub.com/Coach's Corner podcast, and you're going to receive 15 to 25% off your first order. So a great way to shave money. Funny pun there. And also, take a moment of your time to go to stuart-scott.org for the Stuart Scott Foundation and donate to provide patient services to those fighting cancer. As we know, cancer is a very tragic thing. I've had a lot of great friends lose their battle, specifically Stu Scott, a big friend of the show. I always have a meaningful thing, and he's one of the biggest reasons why the show is up and running is for Stu Scott. So go to the Stuart Scott Foundation, donate now to provide those who are battling cancer. And a great quote by Stuart, he said, "When you get too tired to fight, rest and let somebody else fight for you." I'll never forget that. I've got his book. I recommend you guys go out and get it too. Stu Scott, we still miss him very much, especially here in the sports broadcasting world. So, Stu, this one's for you, man. So the first topic that we're going to talk about today is in regards to Greg Hardy, the defensive end for the Dallas Cowboys. If you don't know his name, you probably heard it a million times in the media as the last few months. The Cowboys chose to sign him after he was on the commissioner's exempt list last year, all season, pending the trial. He was convicted of domestic violence, and we just saw the photos that were released of his victim. And they were very, very disturbing to see the bruises, the marks on her arms, on her shoulders, on her back, on her chest, on her neck. It's unacceptable to see that, and for him to still be playing in the National Football League. It's unacceptable. It's a slap in the face to people who've survived domestic violence. Domestic violence is a very, very serious matter, and the NFL has up their game a little bit in determining the severity of the punishment for domestic violence and those who offend. Obviously I think it was a year-long suspension for anyone who was found guilty or accused of domestic violence for the first time. The second time is you're completely banned from the NFL, which is a great thing. Obviously, get these guys out of the NFL. But Greg Hardy was convicted. The theory is that he paid off the girl who was taking him to court. They reached a money settlement. Privately, she never showed up to court on the day that she was supposed to. So the assumption is that she's been paid off, because someone who's been beaten and battered like that just doesn't go silent for no reason. So money is the thing that a lot of people are assuming. So Greg Hardy, he's still playing football in the National Football League, and I'm not really a big fan of that, and I don't support Jerry Jones' reason for it. Jerry Jones comes out saying after these photos were released, I was on my way to Denver for a high school football game that I coach. I was on my way to Denver. I saw the photos, and I was taken away. I showed the photos to all the other coaches in the SUV that we rode up there with, and they're like, "Wow, that's unbelievable. He's still playing in the NFL." That was my original thought as well. How is this guy still playing football for a national entity, an entity that is watched by millions of people, men, women, and children? To me, Roger Goodell, Jerry Jones, allowing this guy to play football in the National Football League, in my eyes, is them supporting domestic violence. Now, they may not support it, but the fact that they're not really doing anything about it, in my eyes, makes me believe that, they're pretty much supporting domestic violence simply for the fact they got a guy who the photos have been released, they're graphic photos. A guy who's got anger issues, which we've seen on the sideline, obviously slapping a clipboard out of a coach's hand, how he reacted with Dez Bryant, his antics in the media degrading and just really smug towards women when his suspension got uplifted towards Tom Brady's wife and her sisters. He really irked a lot of people in the media, coming back into that interview, coming up for the game that they had against the Patriots. His comments were very rude, they were very selfish, they were very inappropriate. And so, he's still there. And then today on Twitter, he goes on and changes his Twitter bio to innocent until proven guilty, and he was calling it discrimination for anyone who thinks he's guilty beforehand. So, obviously this guy just doesn't get it. He's a PR nightmare for the Dallas Cowboys, and a lot of people in the media have been freaking out. They're like, this guy, after the photos were released, something needs to be done. This guy does not deserve to be playing football. He does not deserve to be making millions of dollars at the expense of the fact that he beats women. It's unbelievable. It's unprofessional. It's unacceptable. And so a lot of people, especially in the ESPN media, Rachel Nichols, for example, has put a call to action for the Dallas Cowboys sponsors. And we look at AT&T, Miller Brewing, American Airlines, 3 major sponsors for the Dallas Cowboys. And the request that myself and a lot of people in the media are putting on to cut your ties with the Dallas Cowboys until this guy's off the field. He doesn't deserve to be out there. Let's take a look back at the Adrian Peterson situation. After a photo came out of how he disciplined his child, he left a mark after he disciplined his child with one of those tree switches, something that I myself used to get beaten with and spanked with when I acted up, was a switch from the tree. They'd say, go out, cut your own switch, bring it in, you have to take your punishment, Photos got released of, the mark that it left from Adrian Peterson, and immediately his sponsors cut ties with him. He was suspended for the whole NFL year, went to court, the whole shebang, and lost his sponsors, lost all that money, the Nike, the lifetime sponsorship by Nike in those endorsements, the money. He lost all that because of this. Ray Rice no longer in the NFL. He was on video. He hit his wife. Obviously, that was very, very hard to watch, hard to see. But they've done a lot as a couple. Ray Rice has went to counseling. He's went to court. He's went through the whole judicial system. And him and his wife have made a lot of ads nationally, talking about domestic violence. And, he's learning from it. But he still hasn't gotten a chance to be back in the NFL. But yet, because that was caught on video of him hitting his wife, he can never play in the NFL again. Yet we get photos revealed of a woman that Greg Hardy brutally beat, brutally degraded. And just because there was no video of it, he's still playing in the National Football League. Jerry Jones came out after the photos were released and literally said, "We were aware of the incident when it happened. We have decided to give Greg Hardy a second chance." and I'm going to do my best Jerry Jones impersonation here. Into the media, I'm gonna, pose this as a reporter. Jerry, with the recent photos that have been released regarding Greg Hardy's incident, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I like his passion. He's a great leader for this defense, and I like the way he leads the team. He's a leader on this defense, the way he warms up. I like his passion.
Unbelievable. That, when asked about this, Jerry Jones did not make any sense in his interview with the media regarding this fool and why he's still in the National Football League. So, right now, AT&T, Miller Brewing, American Airlines, I call to you right now and I ask, please, show something. Step away from the Dallas Cowboys. Don't give them any more money until they get this scumbag off the field. He deserves to be behind bars and not playing on national TV every Sunday with millions of people watching. He deserves to be in prison with the lowest scumbags who put their hands on women. One thing about the NFL domestic violence thing that I do have an issue with is the fact that they preach, we don't want it happening here in the National Football League, yet they won't create awareness for it. And the point that I'm going to bring up here, William Gay, cornerback of the Pittsburgh Steelers, he lost his mother when he was a child to domestic violence. She passed away due to the travesty and the beatdown that she got due to domestic violence from a guy. And what he wanted to do is he wanted to create awareness, bring awareness to the NFL and all the millions of viewers and watchers and everywhere, all across the world, to bring awareness to domestic violence by wearing cleats that were purple, and purple signifies domestic violence awareness. And so the NFL fined him for doing that. They fined him for wearing purple cleats, saying it goes against their code of conduct, their clothing codes, things like that. If I'm in National Football League, and this is just me, maybe I'm different than Roger Goodell. Obviously I am. If a guy wants to create awareness for his mother who passed away due to domestic violence, I let him get that awareness. I let him get that message across. If I'm D'Angelo Williams and I want to honor my mother who passed away from breast cancer, if I want to wear purple cleats or purple undershirts, I'm going to let him do that because it's an important thing. The NFL is not only about a business, it's about culture and family and the message that it sends. And right now, the NFL is sending a very, very dangerous message with the fact that they still let Greg Hardy play football every single Sunday. The message it sends is dangerous and it's unacceptable. So NFL, do something. Cowboy sponsors, AT&T, Miller Brewing, American Airlines, please do something. On behalf of the media and everyone else, please do something about this and do the right thing, essentially. So we're going to move from one very controversial topic to another controversial topic, and it's regarding the University of Missouri. Last week, a player from the University of Missouri football team decided he's going to go on a hunger strike, essentially because there have been a lot of activity on campus that has involved a lot of racial slurs towards African American people. So University of Missouri football player decided he's going to go on strike, and 32 other players joined him, and they went on strike, meaning that they weren't going to attend practice, they weren't going to do anything football related, they weren't going to be part of the team until the Missouri president Tim Wolf resigned from the University of Missouri, and essentially he ended up doing that. On Monday, Tim Wolf resigned, admits all of the allegations that administration really hasn't done much to combat the racial tension that's been building up on campus through a social media app on the internet that's called Yik Yak. It's a school-based social media app that allows people to anonymously post things. It said a lot of derogatory and racial comments, and as of today, there were things on campus I saw on Twitter where there were white students in pickup trucks driving around and terrorizing African American students, and immediately when I saw that, I became very saddened. Obviously, here in America, we still have a very prominent racial issue. Racism is still very much alive, and a lot of people say, well, if you don't talk about racism doesn't exist. Why are we trying to shut the door on the fact that there are groups out there who still look upon African Americans as inferior? It's unbelievable. It's disgusting and it's sick. We're all equal people. We should have always been equal from the start. My heart hurts for the very fact that racism is still very alive and well, and African American people are being called the N-word. It's unacceptable. In the day and age we're living in now, here in 2015, you'd think that equality, something that we always preach, would be actually carried out. Instead, we've had a recent string, especially at universities, with fraternities being racist, having racist chants, being discriminatory against, African Americans and other nationalities. It's very it's upsetting, and it's very unneeded. So Tim Wolf, the former president of the University of Missouri, stepped down. The 32 players that went on strike to protest are now back doing football-related activities. The hunger strike is over. And to me, out of this whole entire madness, this very sad situation, there's a positive thing. And it's a positive thing seeing these 32 players take a stand and stand for something that's right, stand for something that's positive. It's not about football. It's not about playing football. It's about equality and feeling welcome. And that's a lot of things that, college people don't understand. They don't feel like they're wanted, like their voice is heard and needed. So these 32 players decided to take a stand against, the authority, and they did a great job. And they really did a thing that, sends a very positive message. The fact that we still have people out there who will stand up for right, even if it means giving up something. So to you 32 players who stood up, and to any other student that joined them in protesting this, and for doing everything you can to combat this racial tension, thank you so much. This obviously is very sad it's still around, but it makes me happy to see that there are people out there who are going to stand up for what's right no matter what, even if it gets them in trouble, even if it goes against them playing football or participating in something. They're doing something for the greater cause, and that's the ultimate testament. And that's something that you all should very be proud of. So very proud of all you guys here on the Coach's Corner podcast. Thank you. And we're going to take a quick commercial break here on the Coach's Corner podcast. When we get back, I'll have Coach Les from the Coach Les Show here on the show. We're going to talk college football, everything about it, LSU, the Greg Hardy situation, and we're going to talk about the University of Missouri with him. I want to hear his thoughts on the topics we just talked about. All that and much more when we return from commercial break. You've been listening to the Coach's Corner podcast on iTunes. Be sure to follow us on social media on Twitter at CoachesCoPodcast. For the latest news and updates, go to CodyRoark18.com, click on Coach's Corner Podcast in the top right-hand corner, and click on the link. It'll take you to where you could subscribe to the page, and any show will automatically be put into your cell phone or your computer within 5 minutes of upload. You've been listening to the Coach's Corner Podcast, hosted by Cody Roark. And we're back from commercial break, and now it's time for me to bring on my special guest for episode 3 of the Coach's Corner podcast, Coach Les of the Coach Les Show.
Hello.
Coach Les, how's it going? It's Cody Roark of the Coach's Corner podcast. How are you doing?
What's going on, man?
Oh, not too much, man. Just getting the show going, man. So, how did your show go this morning?
It was good. It was fun. It was good, man. I had, a couple of guests on. I had my man Brad Johnson, ESPN New Hampshire, on today. Talking, Brad always has to talk about New England winning and getting ready for the game, the countdown to the showdown with the Denver Broncos. And then I had Duran Hill on, the guru. I call him the guru of boxing, because Duran can tell you everything that's going on with everybody, man. So it was a good show. It was a great show.
Awesome to hear, man. So, early on in today's show, what I was talking about, I was kind of analyzing the Greg Hardy situation, and I was kind of touching base on the topic of what should the Dallas Cowboys sponsors do. Obviously, the Cowboys are sponsored by AT&T, American Airlines, Miller Brewing. If we look back to the Adrian Peterson situation, when photos of how he disciplined his child, the marks that were left were made, obviously Nike and them, they cut ties with Adrian Peterson, dropped him from being a sponsor. Well, now that the photos have been released from Greg Hardy's situation and the woman and all the photos that we saw, which were quite disturbing, what should the sponsors do for the Dallas Cowboys? Do you think the sponsors should distance themselves from the Cowboys and Jerry Jones?
Now, see, here's the thing. The sponsors should distance themselves from the Cowboys, but this is going to show you that it is about the money, because Jerry Jones brings everything to that arena. You have pro boxing, you have college games, high school games, rodeos, concerts. The sponsors don't want to miss out on being a part of that. Jerry Jones has only taken X amount of sponsors. So I'm going to say hypothetically, Sprite, 7-Up says, well, we don't want anything else to do with you because of Greg Hardy. Then once they say no, what about the next beverage company that's going to come along and say, we don't mind being with you guys, because Greg Hardy was never really convicted of anything.
Okay. So
it falls into that area that you don't want to miss out on a great sponsorship thing. Now, I get what you're saying. It wasn't right. What we did was wrong. And when you Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson in there, what Greg Hardy did was a little rougher. It was way more. It was different, except for the exception of Ray Rice. It was his fiance, now his wife. Throwing someone on guns and saying, "Which one of these do you want me to shoot you with? Do you want to die with?" Supposedly that was the stuff that was said. I don't know a lot of things, but I'm getting off a little bit from what you were saying. But think about this too, though, Cody. A bunch of other teams were trying to get him. Dallas wasn't the only one trying to get him. Dallas just was the one that gave him the most money to come and play.
So hypothetically speaking, if the photos came out before last week, before Greg Hardy signed with the Cowboys, do you think teams want to sign him after that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think then you have a totally. What we were looking at first was he said, she said, and then she went away from the situation. We don't know if she was paid. People are saying she was paid not to show up and testify, but we don't know what happened other than she said she was tired of talking about it and she left. So all we had was just his word, her word of what happened. Now the pictures come out, so that she has a different life.
Yeah, and a lot of it could be an intimidation factor. Obviously, I've seen Hardy on TV. He's a big guy. He looks like a scary guy. We've seen his anger. When he slapped a clipboard out of a coach's hand, he argued with Des Bryant on the sideline. So, it's apparent that he's got some anger, some issues down deep. Maybe, I don't know, but if I'm Jason Garrett and the Cowboys, obviously Jerry Jones says, you know what, I like his passion. He's a player. He plays a great defense. He's a great leader. I like his passion, and that crazy, creepy old man voice that he does. So, I can see your point of view from that aspect. My biggest thing is I think there needs to be a line of consistency among discipline within the NFL. And I think that can go across every single board. So the next topic I wanted to talk to you about, I touched base on it earlier, was what are your thoughts on all the happenings that have happened at the University of Missouri with President Tim Wolf stepping down after the protest of 32 football players on the team?
Well, I just had this conversation with Brad Johnson from ESPN New Hampshire. Last week I got a message about this. Someone sent me over, like interns that send me certain things. I got a little message last week about this situation. At this time it was only a few players with a young man that was going on a hunger strike, about to go on a hunger strike. And I was like, okay, I didn't really research or anything. As the weekend started to approaches, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. So then I started to read up on it. My thing, what it is, college, like we were talking about earlier on my show, college is the perfect platform to protest anything because you have so much more to lose if it isn't in that platform. College, everything from the Vietnam War on, was easier for people to protest in college. And it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing for those football players because it stood for everybody, not just, the athletes, of course, are put on a pedestal so they don't see as much as everyone else. So when they got it all to their site and they saw it, I think it was the right thing to do, but let's move on from it. I'm talking about the kids at the school and everyone else in that area. Because there's just so much problems going on in that area from Ferguson to everything else that's going on. All right, everybody's leaving, the president is stepping down, or the chancellor, whoever's leaving. They're leaving, let it in, and move on. That's how I see it.
Yeah, and I completely agree, and I touched base on that earlier. I said it was a great thing that, players stepped up and stood for what's right, and they demanded that, we're not going to step foot, we're not going to practice, we're not going to play until something is done about this. I saw the screenshots. There's a social media app called Yik Yak, and it's a school university-based, social media app that has comments from everybody, and the screenshots were very, very racist, very derogatory comments towards African Americans, and it was sickening to see, and it's just sad to it's still around. And as I said earlier, we just had an issue with this within fraternities at Oklahoma and Alabama just a few months ago, and we haven't heard much about it ever since. So it's still a big issue. Good thing that he stepped down. So obviously Missouri players will resume practice and activities. So that's a great thing to see. And so our next topic, we want to talk about college football itself. I'm sure you were watching the LSU Alabama game and with beady eyes. What did you think about LSU losing to Bama the way they did? Did you expect it to be such a discrepancy?
I didn't. I thought this is how I looked at it, and I was just told I was wrong about RJQ3. I looked at it as Les Miles being thoroughly outcoached. And I say that for one reason. You won every game that you played by Fournette. I guess I'm saying his name right. Fournette destroying everybody in front of him, outrunning everybody. He over 150 plus yards rushing a game. You go into that game, you know that Alabama their main focus is going to be, we're taking the running game out of this. You're going to have to beat us another way. Why don't you come up with a way to open up holes for the running back? Why don't you throw the ball a little bit? Throw slants. If he can't throw deep, throw some slants. Throw some comebacks. Throw some stop routes. Throw anything. You can do it all short. Anything to loosen up that front seven. They didn't do that. And by not doing that, they basically gave the game to Alabama. And then Henry, he ran. He was masterful. He looked great. So Nick Saban prepared to me better than Les Miles. So I'm going to say this was a coach's loss.
And I definitely agree. You know, they kept trying to run it with Fournette. And obviously, hats off to Nick Saban and Alabama's defense. It played phenomenal. You know, something that LSU hasn't faced all year. I think it was a reality check. Obviously, that dropped LSU down to 9th in the polls. Alabama jumped up to number 3 in the top 10. Clemson's number 1. Ohio State's number 2. And so, with that said, with the college football playoff format that they have going on here, who do you expect to be in there when the final teams are chosen? Are they going to base it off of who's in the top 6, or who do you think is going to be in there?
I don't know. I was just talking about that, Cody. I was just saying that this is probably the one year out of a lot of years where it's wide open. I don't know who. I think Alabama don't lose again, but they could. I don't see Alabama losing again. Clemson, I thought Florida State would be their toughest opponent. They have North Carolina still. That's it. They only have North Carolina. So they could end up being undefeated. It's a lot of scenarios in there. I think Ohio State doesn't lose again. But it's hard to tell. You know what? In about 2 more weeks, if you ask me that question, maybe then I have a better answer.
That sounds like a great plan. You know, obviously the top 10 changes every single week. But, you know, the top 10 looks pretty strong right now. Obviously, going into last weekend, there were 11 undefeated teams in college football, and 5 of them lost. Obviously LSU lost. TCU fell to Oklahoma State. And Oklahoma State has been a very big surprise this season. You know, they kind of went under the radar a little bit. Clemson's playing phenomenal. Ohio State's still undefeated. Question marks with JT Barrett in the recent allegation, situation he had, trouble with the law. Baylor's playing phenomenal. Iowa's playing really great. And then obviously, you want to look at it this way. I want to know your thoughts. Obviously, Michigan State took on Nebraska last week, and it was a big game. It was a shootout. At one point, it appeared that Michigan State was going to win. They were up by 14, and then they ended up giving up the lead. And they ended up losing on a very controversial call, and a call to which, you saw ESPN personalities Jamel Hill absolutely lose it over. You saw Plaxico Burress go on a tirade, laced tweeting rant, calling for the heads of NCAA officials. It was very crazy. So what are your thoughts on the way that Nebraska beat Michigan State, essentially ending their undefeated season and possibly any chance that they had at the college football playoffs?
So this is the thing. Until we started getting all of these different camera replays and all of those different things, games were always put in the hands of the officials, whether it's basketball, baseball, football, referees, umpires, whatever. It was always in their hands. And we always had a play that somebody would talk about years later and be like, they messed that up. CU winning the national championship. They got 5 down. It's always something that's going to happen that you're going to get with human beings and human error. And I do, Plaxico Burress and Jamel Hill went to listen. I'm surprised that she still has a job, but I don't know, she still does.
Yeah,
I didn't think anything bad of it. I just thought that's what happens sometimes. They won a couple of games this year off of the punt thing. That wasn't a bad call, but it was, they won some things like that. So I guess you guys.
Yeah, very dramatic. Obviously you're talking about Michigan State when Michigan botched the punt that essentially would have ended the game, and ended up Michigan losing in the a battle between the two Michigan teams. So that was very controversial. But obviously as you said, when And you put a game into the officials' hands, with the lack of, different camera angles and this and that, the likelihood of there being a call that doesn't go the way it should is obviously 50-50. As you see at the NFL,
Definitely.
they are experimenting with the pylon cams, which I think has been a great addition to the NFL in terms of seeing replays. So that's helped out tremendously. So, obviously the top 10 right now for Week 11 is Clemson at 1, Ohio State at 2, Bama at 3, Baylor 4, Oklahoma State at 5, Notre Dame at 6, Stanford at 7, Iowa at 8, LSU at 9, and Utah at 10. And someone who's been really impressive to me this season is Stanford. Obviously they've got local Christian McCaffrey running the ball for them. A guy who's not necessarily the biggest running back, but has such tremendous speed and athleticism that he can run through bigger defenses, that you see with USC and you see with some of these Pac-12 teams who get these big guys, big linebackers, big linemen. What do you think of Stanford and obviously the local Colorado product out of Christian McCaffrey?
I don't think Stanford's going to do anything. I think Stanford will get into a good bowl game, and that's about it. I don't see them really doing. I don't see them doing much.
And so essentially with college football, obviously they've talked about reformatting the college football playoff structure to have more teams. Do you think that would be a better match? Because I look at bowl games as a what do they call it? A runner-up thing, qualification. It's like a participation trophy for playing college football. I think essentially gives teams one more game and the right to a Tostitos Bowl or a Rose Bowl, when in reality the only thing that really matters, I think, at the end of the day for most of these coaches and most of these top tens is winning a national championship at the BCS level, which is a very impressive feature. Obviously Ohio State did it last year. But, when we look at that and we look at the combination of ACC, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12, and teams like that, has it been more prominent? Because SEC used to be talked about as the most dominant conference in college football, and I still believe it is in some facets, but I do believe that some of these, teams from the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, they're playing really well. I think they're competing. We saw that with Oregon last year, a Pac-12 team in the national championship game. Do you think these other conferences are starting to compete with the SEC?
No, I don't, and I'm not a SEC fan at all. I don't think they are. I don't. I really don't. Other than a few teams in a couple of other conferences, I think Ohio State is an exception to the rule, a Big Ten, because he's recruiting great talent in another year or two. It's going to be that way because you have Harbaugh in there that's starting to get talent. The SEC is going to get the SEC gets. They're going to get speedy receivers. They're going to get quarterbacks that can throw, and they're lacking defensively, the majority of them. I don't. I see the SEC is getting the best of the best, meaning defensively and offensively. So, no, I just don't see. They're just not competing with it right now. They're just not doing it.
Okay.
I don't see it anyway. To me, I don't see it.
I can see that. I think that argument's valid. Obviously each year teams grow. Obviously it's all about the recruiting process, and that's a very big part. Obviously pipelines out of Ohio, Florida, Texas, and California football for high school football is a big thing for all of these Division I schools, especially in the SEC. So, okay. Very excited about that. So, Coach Les, tell everybody that's listening right now how they can listen to you every week. I know you run your show, The Coach Les Show.
Yeah, the Coach Les Show on NBC Sports KJME, or you can also listen to it on CaliWoodRadio.com. Between 10 and 12 a.m. and 12 a.m. Monday through Friday, you can hear me. Caliwood, I'm only on Caliwood from 10 to 12. And the same thing with KJME, NBC Sports. I also have a TV show. You can catch me, go to Denver Open Media. You can see my TV show. It's called Fourth and Goal. I'm on there. It's on Comcast and DirecTV. Those are the ways you can reach me.
Awesome, Coach Les. So I definitely appreciate you joining me here today on the Coach's Corner podcast, and we'll have to get you back on again here soon.
All right, no problem, man. Let me know when. I'm there.
Okay, Coach. Have a good one.
Hey, you too. Later.
And that's Coach Les from the Coach Les Show. Very glad to have him on the show tonight. Next week, we're going to have my good lifelong friend, Tomas Edwards, on the pod. We're going to talk about life. We're going to be talking about spousal arguments, the most common arguments you have with your spouse or significant other. Tomas and I, we've been friends for almost about 15, 16 years now, both around the same age. So it's going to be a great episode, very funny, insightful episode that you guys guys will all have the privilege of hearing next week here on the Coach's Corner podcast. So the next topic that we're going to talk about before we kind of close things off is we're going to take a deep look into the injury state of the NFL. Why are more and more injuries occurring every single week on the turf, on the playing field, amongst NFL players, specifically ACL tears? And the reason in my perspective, I'm going to tell you like this, because I tore my ACL recently back in May, had surgery, traumatic thing. It's a crazy freak injury. But this year we've seen, I believe there's up to 40 players in the NFL since preseason who've torn their ACL. And so we're going to kind of analyze the science around it. I did a lot of research on it. And a lot of common things is because athletes do not know how to properly decelerate. And that's a big problem. So when you're running downfield and you're going to go chop your feet, or what NFL coaches call breaking down, which is deceleration. If you step out wide with one foot, your left or your right foot, you step out wide, more than shoulder width base apart, you put so much pressure and velocity on that leg, so much force. When you plant that foot into the ground with such force at such a high speed, essentially over time, your knee and any ligament, it may very well snap. And the reason for this is if you take a rubber band and you begin twisting it and twisting it and twisting it and twisting it, what's going to happen? It's going to snap. Eventually, the middle part's going to wear down and it's going to snap. And the same analogy has been made with knee injuries, ligaments inside the knee, and deceleration, proper deceleration techniques are very crucial, which is why it's kind of being taught a little bit in training camps, speed camps. They're looking at ways to reduce knee injuries. Brady Quinn, former draft pick in the NFL, former Browns quarterback, Broncos quarterback, he had an interesting theory about why we're seeing so many injuries this year in the NFL, and his perspective was on the HGH, which is the human growth hormone aspect of things, and PED, performance enhancing drugs. And the reason he says this is he says that essentially PEDs and things like that, what they do is they dehydrate the muscle. They make the ligaments and muscles abnormally tighter on athletes, and the reason for that is he plays into it in what they call a contract year theory. So you've got guys playing in the NFL who are in their last year of their contract, who are trying to get a contract extension or trying to get good look. If he's going to be a free agent, he wants the team to pick him up right away. The contract year theory, it kind of touches base on the fact that they do everything that they can. They exhaust every single resource to make them perform at such a high level. The added pressure of an NFL, trying to make a team, it's competitive. Only 53 men make the roster. And so with this, the contract year theory states that players put so much pressure on themselves in the final year of a contract, they look for an advantage. So they lead, at least to HGH usage, PED usage, and with that, it dehydrates the body, makes the ligaments and muscles tighter, and with that, you're more at risk for injury. The NFL is a high velocity game. You're running around at speeds on average of 15 to 20 miles an hour on the field. Within a 5 to 6 second time window, the average NFL play lasts 4.5 to 5 seconds, and with that, you're going 110 miles an hour essentially, and it's just a collision sport. You're taking a lot of different angles. Your body has to demand so much physicality that eventually one wrong move and then there's a snap, there's a bone break, or there's a hit that's potentially life-threatening. Concussions are a different issue. We'll touch base on that in a later episode. When the movie Concussion starts to come out with Will Smith, we're going to talk about the research behind that and the movies and the potential risks that it may cause, and why NFL owners are scared of it. So we'll talk about that in a future episode down the road. But Brady Quinn has an interesting theory. A lot of guys feel that pressure trying to play for another contract, to get a contract extension, or to potentially get picked up by another team once they hit free agency. So, very interesting theory. It's been a great episode here on the Coach's Corner podcast. We had Coach Les on to talk college football. We talked about the Greg Hardy situation, the racial tension and the situation, the events that are stirring down there in Missouri on campus, and obviously this injury theory. So it's been an absolutely phenomenal show. I've had a great time tonight, and I hope all of you at home who are listening to this, who subscribe to the show, and have enjoyed it too, because I obviously enjoy making it. I enjoy interacting with everybody. So be sure to follow us on social media. The new Twitter handle for the Coach's Corner podcast is on Twitter at CoachesCo, C-O, podcast. Go there, click follow, tweet me ideas. What do you want to talk about? What do you want to hear about on the show? If you want to be on the show, tweet me and we'll work something out. I'd love to get anybody on from the social media world. I'd love to get you guys on so we can talk sports. We could talk anything. We could talk life, because this show is about sports, life, and everything in between. So make sure you guys check out Dollar Shave Club. Make sure you guys go to the Stuart Scott Foundation at stuart-scott.org and donate to provide patient services to those fighting cancer. So this is Cody Roark on the Coach's Corner podcast. Tune in next week as I'm joined by my lifelong friend, Tomas Edwards. We're going to talk about a lot about life. It's going to be a little bit different from the sports world. We'll talk about sports in a little bit. However, this is going to be more on the basis of life and just how we met growing up, and just the funniest things, from spousal arguments to how we first met and became friends. So it's going to be a great episode. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm looking forward to interacting with all of you guys who listen to the podcast each and every week. Also, please be sure to go and tune into the B&V podcast hosted by David Boreanaz and Joey Vendetta. Follow them on Twitter at David_Boreanaz and then at Radio Vendetta on Twitter. Follow these guys on. They make a great podcast about sports, life, and it's just full of laughs and a lot of great things. And for me, I'm honored to be one of their upcoming guests on one of their next podcasts on the B&V podcast season 2. Very excited about it. And as they say, we're back. The following episode of the podcast is now available on iTunes or CodyRoark18.com. Go to the right-hand corner, click the Coach's Corner podcast, click the link, and automatically go and click subscribe, and it'll be put into your phone or onto your computer as soon as the show's uploaded. This is Cody Roark from the Coach's Corner podcast.